first of all, thank you for spending time with us. You are a busy person. Somehow you're managing to stay cool and not sweat like me in your suit. And I'll note that you and I realized that we graduated from the same graduate school, same year. So it's remarkable. But if you would, so tell us, you are representing the government of Sierra Leone in West Africa. You have a huge remit, a huge portfolio for your country, environment and climate change. What brings you here, and what's your perspective on this UN summit?
First of all, thanks for having me. As Sierra Leone is a signatory to this convention on biological diversity, so that's why we come here. And we come because a lot of these problems are global.
Yeah.
And without cooperation and collaboration between governments, between civil society and NGOs, it's very difficult to be able to address these problems. And these gatherings create opportunities for us to come together to at least try to agree on ways forward to address global problems, and then to collaborate with each other so that different countries bring different things. And the goal of the objective is to be able to solve problems that affect humanity.
Wow, and you're with 196 countries, are only about 100 meters behind us in one of the largest rooms I've ever been in, negotiating. What's the dynamic? I mean, you're working across continents, regions. How does it work to actually come together and work to find common ground?
What we tend to see is many times people come here understand these problems, but the challenge is how do they communicate with when they go back to their capitals?
Yeah,
and the pressure is usually when we come here and we make commitments, but honoring those commitments becomes a challenge.
Yeah,
because framing these problems sometimes is difficult.
Yeah,
I think in this case, what people need to understand, the problem we're trying to solve is how do we manage, how do we maintain what is essentially a global infrastructure. Biodiversity, our forests, our global infrastructure that supports life on this planet. And without that infrastructure, none of us will be able to thrive.
And people don't necessarily think of nature as infrastructure, but you and I were on a panel yesterday, and you said we have to think about it like infrastructure that actually keeps our communities running and keeps us alive, right?
Exactly. It's because without it, we won't be able to survive. It's no different than road infrastructure that you have, water infrastructure that you have, or even telecommunications infrastructure. But this is the most basic infrastructure that everything builds on. So it's important that we treat it that way and we make investments as if it's something that our lives depend on.
It's incredible. Our ecosystems are truly our life systems, and healthy nature means healthy people. Now, we talked about the fact that much of the world's biodiversity and intact nature is found in sub-Saharan Africa, in countries like Sierra Leone. And we also talked about really what's needed as it relates to investments. Can you talk about sort of your vision, Sierra Leone's vision for the type of investment that's needed to protect biodiversity?
And that's really the challenge. The challenge is that most of the assets sit in sub-Saharan Africa.
Give us a second. They're broadcasting from Cali, Colombia currently, so we're trying to get another feed in.
Asking the rest of the world especially countries in the north, to also do their part, because maintaining and restoring this infrastructure is important.
What does that look like? Or, if countries are going to invest in this natural infrastructure, in
is that when you compare the amount of money that goes into subsidy, this kind of maybe between 800 million and 800 billion and $1 trillion subsidies every single year. And these sort of subsidies contribute to the degradation that we see of forests.
Apologies, people. Sorry. This is difficult doing from Colombia. Give us a second when we come up our B plan or our C plan. Thank you.
So any interventions that we do have to address their needs, because they're the ones that are stuck in this vicious circle. So, for us, these interventions at the local level will be focused on these local communities. How do we get them out of this negative feedback back into a virtual circle where they will be custodians and protected forest and environment?
incredible. I'm so thankful that you stopped by amid such a busy day to share this perspective. You and I were remarking that all conservation is local, and the work that we're doing in California looks different than the work that's happening in Sierra Leone, but there's a lot we can learn from each other. So I want to thank you for spending time with us. And I know a lot of people that are beaming back to the United States and California are appreciative. And I want to say best of luck for the rest of the negotiations. We're really ramping up the negotiations here that we'll talk about a little bit more. Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care. So what an honor and a pleasure to have the Environment Minister with us. Really, the Environment Ministers are leading their country's delegations, 196 countries strong. In fact, there's only one country that hasn't ratified this treaty on biodiversity. And believe it or not, that's the United States. As a result of an inability to ratify environmental treaties in the United States, our country is actually not a party to this treaty. But it's important to point out that leaders from the Biden-Harris administration are indeed here, and they have been here. Now, my next guest is Renata Gomez. And Renata, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Renata was doing an incredible job facilitating a meeting that I was at yesterday that we're going to talk about. Renata is based, I believe, in Spain, working for an organization called Regions 4. And they are really important, bringing together governments like California, state and regional provincial governments, as well as cities who are right in the middle of this fight against climate change and nature loss. So Renata, I want to turn to you, and if you could, tell us a little bit more. Most of the folks that are joining us here today really probably don't have any idea why 25,000 people have descended here and what's really at stake with the negotiations. So tell us a little bit more about this United Nations process.
Well, thank you, Secretary, for inviting me. This process is fundamental for everything. And actually, I believe that this front shows that this is truly a people's front. You're seeing the green zone is the biggest ever, the largest ever. So I think.
And the green zone, tell about what the green zone is.
Well, the green zone is amazing. It's actually seeing exactly what the biodiversity clubs need to bring this message to you, because this is personal for everyone. As a mother of a 2-year-old, I want my kid to grow listening to bats and listening to the frogs. And the city of Cali is a true testament of biodiversity. I mean, probably you've heard the frogs just in the streets, they're everywhere. So it's amazing. And yeah, so the importance of this, the negotiation processes, and particularly this hub, is to have parties, national governments, to implement the decisions that the parties are negotiating.
So remind us, if you would, what happened in 2022?
The framework, along with many decisions that are going to implement the targets that are going to make us be impact. So most of the targets are bound to 2030, and five years left. It's very early to start on implement. It's actually it's actually relevant to international governments.
It's incredible. I want to first thank you for your patience and for having technical difficulties. I've got an incredible team here, and what I don't think that Colombia anticipated was the number of people that were going to be on the Wi-Fi system. So if you could see us now, we've got our colleagues with different cell phones. We're actually zooming in from a cell phone. So if you get disrupted for a moment, just please give us a second and we'll be back on. So Renato, we've heard that, so this is the world coming together, 2022, a big landmark agreement to take a lot of binding actions to protect nature, including protecting, conserving almost a third of the earth, 30% of the planet by 2030. We're really proud in California because we've established this roadmap to 30 by 30, and we're actually making progress in supporting our tribal leaders and using this to actually not only protect our nature, but to combat climate change and expand outdoor access. You lead a process of other subnational governments, of states and provinces. In your words, why are the actions of our states and provinces around the world important, given that most of the focus of the negotiations is actually between countries?
It's actually fundamental that about 70 to 80% of the actions within the global investment framework should take place at the local institution whenever the world is responsibility. Strong language that is
Yes.
He wants.
And it's incredible. You led a meeting of essentially a coalition of leaders from these governments, including Catalonia, Catalonia from Barcelona, Wales in the UK, several states within Brazil, Campeche, the state in Mexico. And we're really, really excited that we're part of this. I wanna ask a question that you probably weren't prepared for, which is this is a lot of meetings. We're walking around, meeting to meeting. What's been sort of anything inspiring or fun about this gathering?
Well, I think it's amazing to see us. I'll be honest, but there's some very high energy setting. I mean, 7 o'clock, and this is truly the energy of it. I believe it's because of the role of government and role of society about everyone together being here. So I believe it's truly the energy that people are bringing. And I think it's because we are seeing more and more that the issue of nature is not just something that we discuss in meetings. It's about emotion. It's about our personal stories with nature, what connects us with nature. And I think that helps us shifting their eyes towards local international action. We are truly signaling the global environment facility chairperson said it at the AIDS Summit the other day. Said it's true that we move to in the environment with multilateral players taking action long time on like states and governments, but also citizens. And indigenous peoples are so yes, asking the parties to step up, to open their eyes to the it's on the ground, so it's changing.
Yeah, I can definitely feel it. And one of the things I love about this is the ability to see and meet people from around the world. I just came from a panel. We were talking about 30 by 30 and Indigenous leadership. And I was up on the panel with Indigenous leaders from Central America and from Africa, government officials from South America. I mean, this is truly a coming together of humanity. And Renata, to your point, while the UN is about the member states and nations negotiating, what we realize is to tackle these crises like climate change and the nature law, we need everybody to come together. The way I think about it is national leadership is necessary but not adequate. So huge thanks for your work. I guess maybe last question for you is, what gives you hope? You know, we're hearing a lot of disturbing science about how climate change is accelerating, and we're experiencing these in our own lives. You know, what gives you hope about an event like this?
I'm deeply optimistic because I do see that there's a shift in the leadership. It's not just about climate change. It's not just about language. You are seeing yes, signaling that local national governments should have direct access to the fund that we want to TBF. So many international leaders, again, Scott has brought records of presence of international leaders. It's just amazing how the strength of international leaders is growing. And I'm by the council.
It's amazing. It's really the power of just showing up time and time again and making your voice loud and well heard. That while we need national leaders, we need a whole lot of other governments. Even in the United States, as we look to such a consequential election in just a week's time, American states will remain leaders on this, regardless of whoever our president is. Renata, thank you so much for all that you are doing. Thank you so much. We're going to shift actually continents. We've now the Minister of Sierra Leone, an African leader. We heard Renata Gomez, based in Spain, who's organizing these states and provinces. And in a moment, we're going to bring up Marie Ikimoto. Marie is the Deputy Secretary of Climate Change and Conservation of Biodiversity in the state of Rio de Janeiro. We talked a little bit with Renata about these states that are coming together, and we are on what's called a task force of the High Ambition Coalition, the states that are most ambitious around nature protection. And I am so excited. Great to see you. We spent a lot of time yesterday together. Talk to me about, first of all, Rio de Janeiro. What brings you here? I think all of us know Rio as this iconic city that all of us want to visit, but we know less about the state of Rio de Janeiro and your leadership.
Usually people in Janeiro because of the samba, the sugar level, the Cristalina, the beautiful places, but at the same time, Rio de Janeiro protect the rainforest. It's one of the most biodiverse biomes in the world. It's a hotspot, and we are really doing work to protect this. So actually, we joined to the High Ambition Coalition and we are leading this process, and we are really part of that. And we have already 30% of our territory protected by conservation. Yes, that we need to celebrate, but at the same time, we know that we need to advance. So it's just because we are a coastal state, and for that we announce partnership and nature conservancy to create two conservation for our areas. So we recognize what we are doing, but for ambitious, we need to do more. So together with the Harm Coalition, we can be more ambitious. We can send a message that we can make difference.
That's incredible. And I'll say these partnerships between government and our environmental conservation groups are so important. And actually, we in California work with the Nature Conservancy as well. So TNC, as we know, it is one of many environmental conservation groups that is making game-changing difference around the world. And first of all, congratulations that you have already protected 30% of your land, and now your focus is on maritime. Same with us. We talk about our 30 by 30 progress is about 25% of California is protected durably for environmental benefit. Only about 16% of our state waters. So we have some work to do there. Marie, I'm interested in what's your impression? You and I have been at a lot of meetings together this week. You've been in a lot of meetings yourself. What are you finding about this week? What are sort of some key points that you would take away from this week?
I can say 3 words from this COP. First, that we really need to integrate. Integration is key. When I say integration, I'm saying integration in the different levels of governance. So the national, the state, the local level. So we need to work together. And many panels we have discussions about. We have many advances in NBCs for some countries, but at the same time, we need to have progress by the subnational governments, and subnational are so important to connect national to local. And when you think about cities, local, where things happen, so that's really important to have this integration and bring the communities together, the private sector. So integration is really important. And in our state, we are working hard to strengthen the capacity building of our municipalities, because we have so many problems and they have these natural disasters. So heat waves, wildfires. So the climate change, the impact of climate change we are seeing right now, and that's a really threat for biodiversity. The second one is about the climate and biodiversity challenge we need to address. At the same time, we are also the impact of climate change.
That's incredible. So the watchwords are integration, action. Sometimes I can tell you somewhat lonely, like we're the only entity getting hit so hard. But one of the powerful points of coming here is just to learn how we're all being impacted by climate change. And it's why we're racing so hard to not only protect our people, but bring nature back into balance. I am so glad that we met each other here. And I am so thankful for your leadership. Next year, we will be together in Brazil. The Conference of Parties on Climate Change will be held in Brazil. And I'm really hopeful that we can come to your state and see all that you're doing.
Yes, you're invited to visit Rio de Janeiro, and it's a big opportunity to Brazil to lead by example, combating deforestation, increasing restoration. There are our main challenges. So I hope that we will lead with many examples and some advance in this agenda for the COP30. And well, we see you there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Incredible leader from the state of Rio de Janeiro, the Deputy Secretary for Climate Change. I have to say, one thing I feel very fortunate about is that the official language for the United Nations is English. And it's so remarkable that so many of our partners, like the Deputy Secretary, are engaging with us in this diplomacy in a second or sometimes third language. It's just really remarkable. I want to ask my colleague Mike, who's holding the phone, to turn around and take a picture of our friends. We've got our colleagues holding an umbrella so I don't melt away in the sun. We've got somebody that's holding the phone in case this one goes, and then we've got some colleagues over here. But you get a sense of this is just one of the plazas that's out here, here in the indoor-outdoor facility here in Cali, Colombia. All right. Next up, I want to introduce one of the leaders of our California delegation. So, you know, we are here on behalf of Governor Newsom and the Newsom administration, but we are joined by over 100 leaders from California that include tribal leaders and state legislators. We had a Senator Malik Limon and Ash Kalra and Matt Haney here. We have scientists, academic institutions, educators, youth activists, environmental conservation organizations, and we are making California's voice heard here. It's actually really exciting. We're getting sort of a lot of laughs from people that say, oh my God, another person from California. But again, that advocacy, you know, we're here to advocate for faster action, to share our model of what we're doing, and to learn from others. There's a lot that we're actively learning from others. So I want to introduce Cassandra, bring Cassandra Pino here. Cassandra works for the Native American Land Conservancy. And Cassandra, we're also really psyched that you joined our 30 by 30 partnership committee to really help build out our 30 by 30 movement. So thanks for being here. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. Share a little bit about what brings you here, sort of the work that you do and why you're here.
So I'm the policy manager for the Native American Land Conservancy. I work with indigenous communities in Southern California and along the Colorado River. And our organization is always expanding into Northern California as well. Our mission is to preserve, acquire, and protect sacred lands, especially off-reservation lands that may be up for sale and aren't properly protected, and that maybe have cultural sites and important cultural places on them. So that's the main core of our mission, and I'm really grateful to be here in the beautiful country of Colombia, and everything has been wonderful, and to, you know, network with you all and to meet new people all around the world who are in the same sort of fight for, you know, protecting biodiversity in all these different ways, and you know, all these different facets of this work that requires many different people from many different backgrounds and expertise to work together to solve our climate crisis.
It's incredible. And, you know, I talk a lot about the journey that we're on, and just a few months into becoming governor, Governor Newsom did what no other governor has done, and that is issue a formal apology on behalf of California for over a century of historic wrongs. And that was a powerful, powerful day. But tribal leaders and the governor agreed that we needed to actually then listen and learn from tribal communities and then act to actually support tribal leaders. And as I've been educated, 80% of the world's biodiversity is actually being managed by indigenous communities. So actually supporting tribal leadership is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. So Cassandra, when you walk around this conference center, you visibly see a lot of indigenous leaders from around the world because they're in their traditional garb. I'm just interested as an indigenous leader, as a Native American leader doing this work, what's been your impression of the indigenous presence and voice here at this conference of parties?
Yeah, so it's been really incredible, and there's been so many wonderful speakers from all different nations around the world, different indigenous knowledge holders and cultural bearers, elected leaders, as well as folks representing their tribe. I myself am not a tribal leader, but I'm very grateful to be here supporting tribal delegates as they advocate for national monuments in California, including the Satitla National Monument, Choquala and Quetzal National Monuments. And I think the presence of indigenous people is very strong, but it could definitely be more into the future. And we talked about this yesterday amongst ourselves, but we really are inspired by the collaboration across countries and across sovereign nations. And we'd like to perhaps support an Indigenous delegation from North America into the future to get more Indigenous leaders, of course, but also folks from Indigenous communities, just people who work in cultural departments, youth. We really think it's important that we are here because, as is known more now, everything that we come from, all of our culture and spirituality and identity is tied to the ecosystems we're from and is tied to the non-human beings that we share space with. And as we mentioned before, there's a lot of healing to be done with colonial governments that have been established in our homelands. And I think that the more that we can establish Indigenous presence here, the more that we'll make progress towards addressing our biodiversity goals and addressing the climate crisis in a very holistic way that doesn't cause detrimental impacts while we're trying to achieve these goals. And one of the things that I work on a lot with tribes is, this sort of really complex issue of our renewable energy initiatives, especially in the desert. We can't solve our climate crisis by paving the desert over in solar panels and wind farms. And yet we know that solar energy and renewable energy is so important, critical and vital to achieving these goals. So I think that the more that we involve Indigenous people in this, in wonderful events like this, and the more that we try and listen to them truly and actually implement their ideas and principles and values into these frameworks and into these targets that are established by coalitions like this, the more we'll realize that there's a way to address environmental crises that doesn't harm other communities. And that's really important because, we've already lost so much Indigenous people. We are in the midst of a lot of crises of our own in our own communities. And I'm really inspired when I'm here because I think that the fact that there might be jobs in the future for Indigenous people to be paid to be here and involved in this work, to be funded as representatives and to, collaborate with other nations around the world is so exciting. And it provides this path of hope for our communities to be involved in this and to be here and have their voices spoken and be seen and heard. And that in the other side can really help address a lot of detrimental impacts that have happened to us through colonization, through boarding schools, through forced assimilation policies and land theft. And I'm really happy to work with so many wonderful partners like you and everyone here on CNRA staff, because I think that you very much understand that and you want to be a partner to tribes in that effort. So I think we just keep learning and keep involving Indigenous people more and more because we all will be better for it, and it's the right thing to do.
Incredible. I'm so thankful that you're bringing us home to this critically important point. We're here, half a world away in Cali, Colombia, and there's so much work that we need to do in what we know as California, actually supporting tribal leadership. I guess last question for you. We have I think almost 250 people that were registered to join us here today, many of whom are not Native American, are not tribal, but they probably want to be allies. What would you say, what does good allyship look like on these questions?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And there's a lot of ways, no matter where you're from or what your job is or what your interests are, that you can support tribal people. A lot of tribes are really invested in land acquisition. So many of them have GoFundMes, and tribal communities have GoFundMes for acquiring parcels of land. And sometimes, it's not 10,000 acres, but just, a couple hundred acres can be very significant for tribal community. So you can donate that way. You can sign petitions and send letters of support to the National Monument Campaign I announced today, and that the wonderful people I'm here with for the 14th Patsan tribe and this Pit River tribe. You can do that. And I think also one really great thing I like to do is when I'm talking to folks who are interested in the environment, love going outdoors, and who enjoy experiencing the rich biodiversity of California and all around the world, is just to really learn about the place you're going and to seek out resources about the original peoples of those places, and to sort of look for, signs of ways that education about Indigenous people can be improved, because there's a lot of misinformation about us out there. There's you know, a lot of things that sort of in our national parks and in our national monuments could be improved in the future to better educate the general public about who we are, where we come from, how our traditional knowledge is so important to preserving biodiversity, and how that we've been stewards of these landscapes for thousands and thousands of years. And we're still here. We still want to protect these places. And I think that while you're protecting us in conservation, also look how to protect us outside of conservation, support native led policies that address all of these different issues we're involved with, because when indigenous people are healthier, the environment is healthier. So as much as you can help us in all these other ways is beneficial and a way to be a great ally as well.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Cassandra,
Thank you
thank
so
you so
much.
much for being
Appreciate it.
here. What a remarkable kind of inspirational articulation of the role of Indigenous leadership here at this Conference of Parties, but then obviously back home in California. You know, Geeta Chandra, who along with James is helping organize this speaker series, does a great job of providing information in the chat. So those of you who are joining, I hope you're following along in the chat, and you can find out more about Cassandra's work and the work of the Native American Land Conservancy there. I want to bring on our last guest, and is a colleague and a friend named Tim Mayle. And Tim leads EPIC, which is an organization based in Washington, D.C. that's focused on innovating in environmental conservation. You know, it's interesting. We've talked about the role of governments, of national governments, of states and provinces. We've talked about the importance of tribal leadership, the role of environmental conservation, but we haven't talked about what private investment can do to help us avert nature loss and help get our climate change under control. So Tim, I want to invite you up. And Tim, I first want to just ask you to share a little bit more about what is EPIC, and you know, why did you brave this humid heat and fly down here from Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, we're a 40-person NGO, and our mission is fast. So we care about policies that will lead to faster public health progress, faster environmental progress, and private investment can do that when it's built the right way with the right policy framework.
Yeah, and you and I have partnered a bunch on our Cutting the Green Tape initiative, which is all about how do we do environmental restoration more quickly and cost effectively. So big thanks there. You know, you have been in the middle of this conversation this week about you know, private investment, and I think for some environmentalists, the idea of private investment into preserving biodiversity feels scary because, you know, are we commodifying nature? Are we monetizing nature? But the way I think about it is when we've heard from, for example, the Sierra Leone environment minister on the amount of funding that needs to be invested in protecting this natural infrastructure, you know, we need much more than government can provide. Our companies are large, you know, big international companies are among the biggest players in the global economy. And from my perspective, they should play a role in protecting nature. So talk about that conversation. How would you characterize what's happening here in Colombia?
Yeah, I mean, this meeting would have traditionally been a meeting of environmental people from government and non-government. There are a phenomenal number of kind of Fortune 500 companies here. I heard a stat that more than 10% of Fortune 500 companies now have a biologist on staff, and they're developing biodiversity strategies.
Wow,
right? That's a big shift. And not just private companies, but think about pension funds, right? Like many of the people in California, and certainly your whole workforce, has access to pensions. Those pension funds are trying to figure out how to put their assets in things that help the planet while also producing an economic return. So that's the kind of money we're talking about, right? Trillions of dollars, lots of companies trying to do this because they recognize that the planet is really finite. Like everyone can see that at this point.
Yeah, and I'm proud of a lot of California-based companies that are actually doing this work. I'll just give you one example. Apple, which we all know, and in a lot of our pockets actually, literally in our phones and tablets. Apple invested in a water restoration project, an environmental restoration project in California with a nonprofit called River Partners. And when I, heard about that, that to me was a really powerful example of, gosh, how many projects like that could be funded if there are ways for private companies to actually be able to invest. One thing that's been talked about this week is developing something like biodiversity credits, which are a little bit like carbon credits. But I think a lot of people that don't follow this stuff don't even know what it means to have like an environmental credit. So break that down for us and talk a little bit about what's being discussed this week.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can make it complicated the definition of a biodiversity credit, but it's basically a specific amount of outcome that can be measured and is based on kind of a theory of change. Lots of people are good at creating environmental benefits. We've been doing restoration for hundreds of years, right? So carbon is new. Restoration is not new. Indigenous people have been doing it for thousands of years, right? We're actually really good at a lot of restoration. So a biodiversity credit is fundamentally this unit of improvement to nature. And it's set up in a way, for example, with permanent protection of the site where the restoration occurs, a set of metrics to measure different parts of biodiversity, right? So think of bees, butterflies, and maybe the amount of water on a property. And it's got all those components. And it's set up so that a company, either because they're trying to just do good, right? Almost philanthropic, making a contribution. They want to invest in something they know is real, or they're figuring out their supply chain. A great example from a major car company that I heard here was they have 15,000 suppliers that provide parts for those cars. There's no way they can figure out what the impact on nature is of 15,000 suppliers, but they want to do something about it. So they're willing to put money, potentially willing to put money into units that will benefit nature. At its heart, though, they really want to know that they get something. And so a biodiversity credit that says, has nature improved on that site, is fundamentally about accountability too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of my colleagues from Catalonia this week really talked about the challenge we have is there's great complexity with this situation around nature loss and how it's impacting both our communities and biodiversity. There's a lot of uncertainty about, how fast the climate change will accelerate, but there's also tremendous urgency, which we know we have to move further faster. So to me, it feels a little bit like a no-brainer. We have to figure out a way for companies to actually invest in nature, because of course our system, traditionally capitalism, has externalized a lot of these environmental impacts. So, what's your thought on the path from here? I mean, what do you take away on this whole discussion of private investment and maybe biodiversity credits too?
Yeah, I mean, let me start with biodiversity credits. There have probably been 100 panels on biodiversity credits, kind of exceptional interest overflowing in rooms. I don't think anyone expected that, especially based on the small size of the rooms they gave us. And just phenomenal interest. And so right now there's projects that are led by Indigenous people all around the world. There's projects on private lands. There's some projects on government lands, projects led by the private sector, by entrepreneurial startups and by communities. So there's kind of supply. The next step is really, making that demand, putting those pieces together, the private investment and the credits. So, but just based on the level of energy, again, that 100 sessions on a subject like this, and I'm a total environmental nerd, and like, what are all these people doing wanting to talk about this subject? It's new, right? That's part of it. It seems new to people, so that's part of it. But there's coming out of this, there's going to be a very significant global effort to say, we didn't realize that was going to happen. We're now going to figure out how to really make sure that by the time the next COP happens, that there's a lot more use of these credits by businesses.
That's incredible. I mean, that's actually a cause for real hope, because as we're all talking about, these changes are accelerating, and we have nature loss happening across the planet, accelerating climate change. So I love the mission of your organization, EPIC, faster. So the faster we can get more funding into reversing nature loss, protecting nature, the better. I guess last thought, just off the top of my head, what's been your most fun moment here? It's a lot of work, but there's also a lot of energy.
Yeah, I mean, funnest moment is well, there's a couple, but like the most fun one was doing a press briefing and basically saying to the reporters, we're not presenting anything, we just want to answer questions. And a reporter standing up and saying, that's great, I'm glad this is a safe space. My question is, because there are these credits in the country of England, is the Bank of England the same as the Environment Bank in England? And it was just like, wow, we really need to start educating at a basic level and think about our language, our terminology, and really go at people where they're at.
You are a total environmental nerd, if that was your funnest moment. But I love that. No, I love that. And I got to say, it's remarkable. Every day, we've been here, I think 5 days. This is our last day here. We meet over 100 people, and each of them could actually be part of this discussion. But I really wanted to feature you, Tim, because I think this discussion around how we actually bring the private sector into these environmental crises and really playing a central role in these, you know, in solving these environmental crises is essential. And I'm really thankful for everything that you do.
Yeah, it's great to see you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I've got just a few more closing thoughts here. Thank you for sticking with us for 45, 50 minutes. Sorry, we've had technical difficulties. I'm really passionate about sharing what we're doing when we come to these international summits with you. I think that sometimes they can feel really opaque, and for people that are back home might say, well, geez, why are you going halfway across the world? And you know, my most powerful answer is that everything that we're experiencing right now in California, whether it's wildfire, worsening drought and flood, extreme heat, is a planetary challenge in nature. We know that the atmosphere is what we all share. And California can be proud of our leadership in so many respects, combating climate change and protecting nature. I couldn't be prouder of this 30 by 30 movement. But if it only happens in California, we're not gonna make the scale of change that we need. And so that's why California comes to these convenings. And I'm so proud that we've really diversified our delegation, and we have so many different kinds of voices in this work. We head home tomorrow. I think our team is going to write some blogs on this. If you wanna actually share out this recording, it'll be available at resources.ca.gov here in the next couple of days. I want to do something, and I want to bring our team up. Mike, you can't come. Well, actually, you can. All right, come here, come behind me. We have an incredible team here. These are the experts on biodiversity and habitat in our agency, and they've been working their tail off. So I really want to thank you guys, and just appreciate everybody's interest in what we do. I want to ask James to bring us to our final slide, and that is with an email address. If you have any questions or input on anything we talked about here today, or suggestions on future discussions in the Secretary Speaker Series, please do let us know. Until we are on together again, take care, and we will sign off.